Shaking on Shakedown Street. Used to be the heart of town. Some of this town ain't got no heart.
Hi everyone, day 25, quarantine history. We left off yesterday with Mexico gaining its independence from New Spain, and we talked about the three provinces of northern New Spain, which were California, New Mexico, and Tejas, Texas. We talked yesterday too about had Mexico been able to hold on to all that land, it would be a pretty powerful country today. I mean, obviously California would make a huge difference, and all the gold that's going to be found during the gold rush in 1849 would all have gone to Mexico, and so it would be a different country for us all. And so California. So Mexico is going to gain its independence, and things are going to change for a lot of people. In California, the Mexican government is going to end the mission system. They're going to give the land to the Californios, the original Spanish, now Mexican citizens living there. They're going to create huge cattle ranches. In Texas, a lot of people during the revolution will be killed, and so Texas already had problems beforehand. Those problems are now going to be worse because there are less people there. There's about 2,500 people left in all of Texas by 1821, which is the year that they gained their independence. And so, if you want Texas to be safe, you need to have people. People are scattered throughout. It's dangerous to live that way. There's not enough people around to protect it. And so the Mexican government has an idea. Why don't we recruit settlers? We're going to essentially advertise and try to attract people from the outside to come into Texas and live. Obviously, the people who are closest to Texas, who it'll be easiest to recruit, are Americans. And so the Mexicans are going to hire what are called empresarios. They're essentially like recruiting agents. One of the earliest of those recruiting agents is a guy by the name of Moses Austin. You know Moses Austin because of Austin, Texas. That's not who it's named after. It's named after his son. The agents are going to receive a lot of land for every 200 families they bring in. And so Moses Austin is going to become this recruiter, but before he can really get anything started, he's going to die. His son, Stephen F. Austin, is going to take his place, and he's going to start recruiting in his dad's place, and he's going to start to create or try to create a colony of Americans along the Colorado River that runs through Texas. I mean, you're talking about eastern Texas. Most people think Texas and they think, tumbleweeds and dirt streets, and I have to tell you that eastern Texas is a lot like Louisiana and Arkansas. A lot of trees, a lot of water, pretty good soil and stuff there. Stephen Austin will bring the first 300 families from America to Tejas. They'll get nicknamed the Old 300. He's going to work very, very hard with the Mexican government, which it has a lot of turmoil, and really there's a lot of power struggle going on, which is not unusual for new countries. But he's going to work very, very hard to kind of keep the peace between the two groups and really try to make this thing work. By 1834, there are 20,000 Americans who have moved to Texas. Now, I told you after the 1821 that the revolution, the Mexican Revolution, there's only 2,500 Mexican settlers there. And so in 10 years or so, 13 years, you have 20,000 Americans living there. Most were from the South. Cotton is extraordinarily lucrative at this point. There's a lot of land in Texas that's ideal for growing cotton. And the land is super cheap, way cheaper than anything that can be bought in the United States. And so people are going to move there in droves, essentially. And they're going to bring their slaves with them, which is going to be a different problem, seeing how slavery in Mexico is illegal. Most went because of cheap land. Each man would receive 640 acres, which is a 1 square mile. If you had wife and kids, you got more. Other land grants offered as much as 4,600 acres for every married man. The thing about those pieces of land, though, they weren't real farmable. They weren't real nice. And so you have Mexico, and they're trying to make Texas safe, and so they've recruited these people, and most of these people were Americans. And I think you can probably figure out where this is going. You know, if you bring 20,000 Americans into Mexico and they set up their own little corner of the country, and you know, how loyal are they going to be to the Mexican government? And the answer is they're not. There are requirements set for these people who moved to Mexico. Number one, and these are I'm pretty sure these are on the test, I know for a fact. Number one, if you wanted your land grant, you wanted the cheap land, you had to agree to 3 things. Number one, you had to agree to be a Mexican citizen. Is that a deal breaker? No, not really. The other 2, though, are a lot tougher to kind of swallow for Americans. The second one is you had to obey Mexican law. And the problem with that is the Mexican government in Mexico City is so far away, number one. And number 2, you know, there's no loyalty to them at all. And so they don't really need to follow the law, and there's really no one to enforce the law. And so it kind of becomes a little bit of a mess when the Mexicans do show up, that no one's paying any attention to them, but of course there's really not much they can do about it. And the last one is a real stumbling block. If you wanted to take the Mexicans up on this land, you had to support the Roman Catholic Church. And we've talked about this multiple times with the know-nothings and everything else. Most Americans today and most Americans back then were Protestants. And, you know, we've only had one Catholic president. And so if Mexico thinks that these people are all going to all of a sudden start following Catholicism, that they're really out of their mind. They'll say they're going to do all these things, and they'll be given their land, and then they'll just go about being their bit, you know, doing their own thing, and you know, going about their business. This obviously is going to become a problem. Essentially, if you want to make it really, really short, all these Americans who move to Mexico just act as though they're still in America, and they're not, and that's going to be an issue. Most of them didn't have any interest in any of these things. They just wanted the land. By 1830, there's more American settlers than Tejanos, than Spanish settlers. They're ignoring the law, which I already told you. They acted as like they're still in the United States, they're still in America, and they feel no loyalty to the Mexican government whatsoever. You know, it's not really, they're not real happy about it. Mexico's not real happy about it. There's not a whole lot they can do. Mexican officials are going to complain that these people don't respect the government. The Texans are going to complain that they're not fairly represented in the Mexican government, and so you know, there's tension there. Most Americans, and I know this is on the test, most Americans think that the central government of Mexico is way too powerful. You know, they want the Constitution of 1824, of the Mexican Constitution, to be strictly enforced. Now, obviously, if you're Mexico, this can only go on for so long, and Mexico is going to respond to this lack of cooperation, I guess, by the Americans by trying to enforce the laws there more strictly. And that's just like sticking a match next to gasoline. By 1830, they're going to start to they're going to attempt to start to limit the number of Americans there. They're going to work hard to keep settlers from bringing slaves in. But like I told you earlier, a lot of this land is good cotton land. I think earlier when we did the South unit, the cotton belt was South Carolina to Texas. And if you're growing cotton, you have slaves. They're going to raise tariffs on American goods, which will upset the Americans, and then eventually they're going to send Mexican soldiers there, and it's just a disaster waiting to happen. The Texans are going to get angry. Americans are going to get angry. Stephen Austin, who's built this thing and tried so hard to keep it together, is going to go to Mexico City and try to work out a solution to this whole thing. He's going to go there with a petition asking for more self-government, and instead of getting any cooperation, he's going to be put in jail. And now this whole thing is turned into just bad. It's just not that there's no good ending in sight for this entire thing. The straw that sort of breaks the camel's back is the election of this guy right here, Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna. He's going to be elected president of Mexico, and one of the very first things that he is going to do is he's going to suspend the Mexican Constitution. He essentially is going to put himself in power. Mexico's going to become a dictatorship. He's going to become like a king. He's going to get rid of all they're essentially like states of the country of Mexico, and everything comes underneath his control. Austin will serve 1.5 years in jail, and when he returns, he's going to call for the Texans to rebel against Mexico. And so the Americans have had enough, the Mexicans have had enough, and it's just not going to turn out well. And what you end up with is a Texas Revolution. It starts in the town of Gonzales in 1835. The Mexican army is going to show up, and they're going to try to remove a cannon that the town owns. I'll find this picture and I'll shoot it up for you. I'm not exactly sure why they were so worried about this cannon. I'm not sure, maybe it shoots golf balls at people. I don't know why they have this big cart with these wheels. I'm pretty sure I could carry that thing and shoot it from my shoulder. But anyways, the Mexican army is pretty upset. The Mexican government's upset. They're coming to take their guns away. A group of soldiers shows up outside the town, and the townspeople are standing there with their rifles. They're surrounding their cannon, and they're flying a flag that says "Come and take it." And for those of you who remember, this flag hangs in the window in my class, and so that's where it comes from. A fight breaks out. The Texans win. There's our pea shooter, and now you have rebellion. And so the Mexican government at this point is now put in a position where they're going to have to do something. They're going to put this rebellion down. I don't want to get too far along because this story kind of runs together here. Obviously you have trouble in Mexico. Like I said, I'm trying to keep these a little bit shorter for you, but I'm expecting you to watch them. That's your end of the deal. That's your end of the bargain. This works out. Finish the game, right? Keep working towards the end. You're almost there. You'll be in 10th grade, and I think most of you want to be out of my hair. So just keep doing what's right, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Shaking on Shakedown Street used to be the heart of town.